Hey everybody, this is another official Gray Fox Games YouTube video. This is me, Lance Meister, the Undead Viking, and the long-awaited return of my man from Albania, Josh Lobkovich. This
Tens of people have been clamoring to hear
yes.
my wisdom.
So Josh and I banter back and forth a few ideas and videos all the time. And then I don't know how we started talking about the ratings of games and we talked about like the BGG rating system and whatever. And then I think I mentioned that like only a handful of games ever get a rating of a 10 for me. And then Josh tried to call me out by saying, "Oh, it looks like you've got like, this number and of things rated 10 and
Way more than I have. Way more.
way more."
You're
And
handing
so
out tens like candy.
true. Well, no, not really. But anyway, so then we came with this idea of like us coming up with a game that we considered a 10 that aren't in our personal rating system and then defending it. And I don't know if Josh, you wanted to go first with yours and I could like point out why I don't think it's a 10, or maybe I agree with you, or should I talk about mine? I mean,
Well, having no idea what you expect from the format, I think you should go first.
okay, so yeah. Well, what prompted this possibility? Like, I think we started having this discussion, and you said, "Wait, let's just do this and actually record it." So I said, "Cool." And so one of my few tens that I love, and
Many
it's a
tens,
game
one of your many tens.
that I'll sit down and play if people ask, and that is the game Battlestar Galactica, which is the hidden role. Kind of semi co-op game published by Fantasy Flight Games. I think they published it before they were absorbed by Asmodee. I don't I believe so, but they based the
I think
IP
so too.
on the newer uh TV show. And for me, when I remember when I picked it up, because everybody was like, and this is a long time ago now. When I picked it up, people were like, "Oh, you gotta play this game. It's amazing." And I don't know where I first heard that, but I remember I snagged a copy from whatever store I was buying games from at the time. It was probably Boards and Bits. Pour one out for Boards and Bits. I and then I remember sitting down to play, and mind you, I had friends that talked about this TV show like it was just the greatest TV show ever, but I'd never watched it myself. And this is back when for streaming, this was like you had to actually tune in on a specific day, on a specific time, if you wanted to watch a TV show. And I just, either I
So
worked.
let me sidebar this for a second. You played the Battlestar Galactica board game before watching Battlestar Galactica.
And I've never really watched Battlestar Galactica other than being in the room while it's been playing. And I still love the game. I mean, I absorbed through osmosis enough, like, or Gaius Baltar is an annoying character, or like they really like Adama is awesome, things like that. But I mean, I've never ever watched a
Your
single.
friends just told you which characters to like.
Eventually, yeah. I mean, I eventually learned as far as like the character concepts and the backgrounds for the different characters, and I got the jargon, if you will. But
Sure.
I felt that the usage of the hidden role worked so perfectly. The whole process of and this is I'm going to just assume the people that will watch the tens of people that will watch this, that you're faced with a crisis. Everybody puts in cards, multi-use cards that can either help or hinder said crisis. They're jumbled up secretly. You reveal them, you find out whether or not you defeat that crisis. And from the cards that are put in, and there is a random assortment that is put in as well, you can maybe discern that somebody there playing is a Cylon and is working actively to try to defeat uh, you from succeeding in your endeavors of saving the human species. And mechanically, I will fully give up before Josh attacks it. I will fully give up that mechanically it becomes a bit of a churn. but it is obviously the discussions, the accusations, the attempts at trying to root out the traitor amongst you before you they can bring an end to everything that is going on with the human species and your battle star, if you will, that makes it so much fun. Now, this is where Josh will, of course, tell me where I'm wrong, and it theoretically, unless it's a 10 for him as
Oh,
well.
you fracking toaster. There's no way that game's a 10. Um, no, I don't know. I mean, BSG is actually a really good game. Um, but like, it's not perfect, right?
Well, I
Like,
already said
I mean,
the
part
churn.
part of this is maybe why you have 610s and I have five.
It's
You
like
can
10.
300 tons and I have five. Is that your threshold for perfection is lower than mine. I will tell you, I think Battlestar Galactica is a brilliant board game. I think the system where you put in the cards and you can help or hinder that little bit of sabotage has laid the groundwork for um, similar mechanisms in other hidden trader games moving forward. I think it's really well done. Um, I also think the game is rife with problems, and that's part of the reason that it has four expansions. So like never mind the fact that this is a game that even if you have now convinced the world it's a 10 that nobody will ever be able to buy because it's out of print and never coming back, and you'll have to spend $1,500 to pick it up secondhand on eBay. But in that core game, and actually across all of the games, that game only works with exactly five players. So if you have another number of players, it falls apart. If once they introduce the Cylon leaders, that gets better, but it's still not great. That game is at its best with five, and everything else is a lesser experience. In the core set, you better have a pilot or you're going to die. And if you're the pilot, you will just spend your whole game rolling one die every turn.
Yes, the pilot is the role that unless somebody is foolish and takes it right away. I mean, we have often said the most important die roll in the game is the die roll to determine who gets to pick their character first. So you aren't jammed with being the pilot at the very end.
Sure.
And you if you can't roll an 8 on that 8-sided die so you get to pick first, you're hoping the person to your right rolled the 8. So clockwise you still have a good option available to you when it gets to you.
So I think we agree that game's not a 10 to whoever
But
has to be the pilot. And at least they only have to do it for 4 hours because it is not a short game.
it is not a short
Um,
game. Now,
Look,
have you played
it is it's
Unfathomable?
hold on. It's absolutely a brilliant game. The way that you combine your cards in order to beat the challenges is one of the ways that it is brilliant, but the other ways that it is brilliant is in the distribution of sort of important power public roles, right? The fact that the admiral is known and they choose from a hidden selection of cards how far you jump is
Mm.
another opportunity for like sort of hidden trader messes, but also because they draw from a random deck, it creates doubt even when you have a loyal admiral, right? If I draw two cards that say we jump the absolute minimum distance and our goal is to jump a distance of 8. If I draw two cards that only let us jump one and I play those, everyone at the table thinks that I'm the traitor, even if I'm not. And I love that it forces you to make those decisions. And when you are loyal, usually you can fend this off because the rest of your actions should show that this is true. And if you are, in fact, a traitor, you are compelled to be a team player anyway, long enough that you can, jam the knife in somebody's back later. So some of these mechanisms are really brilliant. And a lot of them aren't. A lot of them aren't in the core game, right? The importance of the pilots with how little fun you get from being them is kind of a bummer. The fact that the when Cylons show up are cards that are shuffled into a deck of like over 100 cards means you can have games where they just never show up, or
Mm.
they show up 6 times in a row. And every expansion for that game did do something to move it closer to perfection. Every big box, full priced expansion did add 4 modules, one of which ever anybody cared about. And so if you do have this game and you have all 4 expansions and you've taken the one module from each of them, you've built yourself a perfect game of Battlestar Galactica. And quite frankly, for a gameplay experience for me, it is it is a high ranking game. It's not a 10. But it might be an 8 or 9 with the right combination of expansions, with the right group of exactly 5 players. And so it's a little bit restricted, but the game is brilliant. So if I'm supposed to tell you it sucks, it's going to be hard for me to make that attack as vicious as maybe it would be entertaining for people.
So the only and I'm actually going to argue for you here a little bit. The one thing, and I've asked you about Unfathomable, the real reason I asked you about that is to dovetail into this. The one role that like if you like you say you when you play with five you don't run into it, but with like two or four people, I mean with two, not two, you don't even play with two, it's three to six. But there's the Cylon sympathizer role where which is a horrible role because depending upon how well the game is going determines whether or not that sympathizer helps the humans or helps the Cylons. And it breaks the theme of the game because I've played in games where people say we need to get one of our things just barely into the red, meaning bad. So when the sympathizer shows up, they'll side with the humans. And then we got the game won. So like they're actually like talking about the mechanisms of the game instead of actually the theme of the game. And I've always despised that, and that still exists even with all these, as you say, full box expansions. But Unfathomable, which was the game that was based on Cthulhu because they don't have access to the Battlestar Galactica
Sure. Just to
IP
be clear,
anymore,
Unfathomable is BSG just rethemed and repackaged.
but they changed one thing in that game and it made the sympathizer really good. And it is the cultist character takes on the sympathizer character.
Mm.
And the cultist always wants Cthulhu to win. It'd be like if the Cylon always wanted the Cylon, didn't never wanted to side with the humans, but they have to wait to really start hammering and trying to make sure the humans drown and Dagon comes and destroys the ship. When you get to traveling to eight, you're at the end because you can see land, and that means that you'll be able to swim to shore. And because if Dagon destroys the ship before then, you drown just like everybody else, and you also
Mm.
die. So this, a person in the group is a cultist, but they actively want you to do well until a certain point, and
Just not well enough.
just not well enough. They want you to
Yeah.
get within sight of land, and then the gloves come off, and they can go
Okay.
full on, take out. And I wish that they had incorporated that. And I theoretically maybe you could add that into and just house rule that. But
It's
it
a
really
cool idea.
fixes it.
I haven't played Unfathomable, and I would love to, but the days for me are gone when I have a big enough readily available game group that I need to own games like that. I mean, when if you tell me this game only plays well with exactly 5 players, I'm like, cool, I'll play it at a convention.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, so I think it's still amazing. You think it's almost as amazing as I do. What do you got for me, Josh? What's your 10? And the idea behind this is that we will have other 10s that we will defend at a later time, but hit me
Sure.
with your best shot.
So I've picked something that I think is going to dovetail with your pick kind of well, but I also think it's sort of a softball because it's a game that I know most people don't rate particularly highly. And my 10 is Werewolf. And so I'm
Which
happy to
version? Ultimate Werewolf, Werewolf, Which one of the seven different werewolf games that why can't I Bezier Games came out with?
Well, I mean, no disrespect to Bezier, but they didn't invent this game. So who cares, right?
Okay.
Like I like this game as an experience. I don't like it as a product, right? Like I'm not talking about Ultimate Werewolf or Werewolves of Miller's Hollow. I'm talking about Werewolf, just the game conceptually, right? You can play this with a standard deck of playing cards if you want to assign the roles, right? And I know that it's very easy to tear this apart because the experience of Werewolf is fragile. Um, but it's a 10 for me because when this game goes well, it is exactly the experience that I want. It is the purest form of social deduction. It requires very much a group to establish a meta. It requires people to understand how the rules work and certain expectations of how people play the roles so that then those expectations can be subverted. Um, and in truth, this is a game that brings out the best of what I like in games. Mechanically, it's rules light, and the experience comes very much from the people that you are playing with. And the reason this game is a 10 for me is because there was a period of many years in my life where I had a werewolf group I played with regularly in my hometown, at conventions, and online. And I have some of the most memorable experiences of gaming sort of ever in playing werewolf. And also, for anybody who was in a musty hallway at BGG Con, in the early days of that convention, I'm sure they've seen me in a state I would be embarrassed to be seen in today, playing werewolf at 2 in the morning. But yeah, I mean, it's it's pure social deduction. It has very little actual information unless you're using more complicated roles and getting sort of later in the process. And for people who can do that and kind of role play it and get into the spirit, I think it provides a very pure social deduction experience, which I enjoy immensely. And then, like I said, that experience is very fragile. There are a lot of ways it can fall apart, but I think that's your job to
Well,
point out.
well, I mean, the obvious ones are it requires a moderator, which means that one person, unless you have somebody, and there are people out there that really enjoy being the moderator. They like being like get their hands dirty and they get to kind of control the room and control what's going on. But sometimes it's really, really tough to find that one person that'll do it. You mentioned the roles. I mean, at one point after there were like nine different things that were going on, who just like you had like the werewolf cub and like the bodyguard and like you had all these things. It got way too confusing. You're handing a sheet out to everybody so they know which is why, when you go down to what's that Blood in the Clock Tower game, which I think is like a pretty fantastic, like obvious werewolf inspired game, but I didn't really enjoy it when I played it because there's like 27 different roles and I didn't know what half of them did and so it's root, right? When you have just werewolves, villagers, and one seer. I mean, it's a very, very easy gainer. And I'll say this when I have gone camping with my in-laws, you know, my nieces and my kids would always want to play werewolf. And God love them, my father and mother-in-law would sit down and play. Just like I don't know if they really knew what was going on. My father-in-law was actually pretty crafty when it came to certain things and being clever about those stuff. But I mean, so it definitely gets people in, but the biggest problem with werewolf is always going to be the first night because you usually you have no knowledge to go on. Nobody's really talking, nobody's saying anything, and the werewolves eat somebody, and somebody hasn't even gotten to play, and they're already out, and they just got to sit there and watch, and that
Yeah,
person
I
doesn't
mean,
have any fun.
so I mean, I'll push back on that a little bit. I won't push back on it in terms mechanically, right? You're right, right? The first day you have nothing to go on. But I will say that I don't think it's necessarily true that that person doesn't have any fun. I think it's true if it's their first game of Werewolf that they don't have any fun. But like I said, I think this is a game that benefits from repetition. It benefits from a group. It benefits from establishing a meta. And so, like, when you have people and you know how they play and you know how they behave and you know what they are likely to claim, day one becomes more interesting. And so, if this is something you play once or twice, I think it very quickly either resonates as an experience that you think you will enjoy, and I know that you will enjoy more if you pursue it with the same group of people, or an experience that is just not for you. And there's no amount of discussion that is ever going to convince somebody who has played a game of werewolf and had a bad experience that no, no, this is the game for you. It isn't. It isn't for everybody. It isn't for everybody. And you're right that it can stink to get eliminated early. You're right that it can stink that it requires a moderator, though that also isn't always true. And there's also a sweet spot for werewolf, I think. There are, like you said, a million sets of this. An ultimate werewolf comes with a billion cards, and it says something like 0 to 99 players. And like that's like technically true, but you'd never want to do it, right? You want to play a game of werewolf with like, you know, more than like 7 to 15 players. And that's enough space that you can have some interesting interactions, that you can have some fun roles, that the sets aren't samey. But also, you want to have a moderator that will keep pushing and make things come to a vote, not let players go on forever, because a good game of werewolf should take, 30 to 90 minutes, depending on the group. It shouldn't take 2 hours, right? And if you can play 4 games of werewolf with the same 10 people over the course of, 2 to 3 hours, and it's your jam, I think it is absolutely the I think it is the purest social deduction game that there is. And for whatever it's worth, I think Blood on the Clock Tower has done a lot of things right, and I understand why people love it. I don't think it will ever take root in my heart the way that Werewolf has done, not just because I have such fond affection for years of playing Werewolf, but because of two things. One, that it has a lot of actual deduction in it. So you have to have that sheet of all 20 roles that are possible and understand exactly how they work to do that sort of true deduction part. And also because their solve for the moderator it isn't really a solve, right? The moderator, there's that game still requires a moderator. It just makes the moderator responsible for balancing the experience in real time, right? It makes
Yes.
them an active player, that it makes them more like a like a like a dungeon master for
Yeah.
D&D or something, right? They're it's much more on them to create the experience for the players. In Werewolf, that role is really just to manage that the rules work properly. And so that's a plus or a minus depending on what you want. But for whatever it's worth, I like moderating Werewolf. I prefer playing Werewolf. But I also know people that prefer moderating Werewolf to playing Werewolf. And
And qu
again, I'll fully admit that this is not. I'm not the attorney for the defense of Werewolf, so maybe I picked a bad game to defend my 10's on. But if somebody says I played this and I hated it, like Shane has, there's no amount of like rationalizing somebody into having a bad experience. You can have a bad experience at Werewolf, and if you love this kind of game, maybe it's worth playing a couple of times. But if you don't, it absolutely isn't. For some people, this isn't even a game.
I am curious if Mafia came before Werewolf or if they were both kind of created at the same time. Or, I mean, I think it's just kind of generally understood that both of those games have kind of existed with each other. And I remember my youth minister way back at Pentoppiden Lutheran Church used to run games of Mafia, which was, I guess, better because we weren't, lynching people and eating them. We were just arresting people and putting them in jail.
Well,
And
and murdering them.
well, I mean, I think it was like you're in the hospital is how he described it. He was just kind of hand waving away that there was no deaths occurring. But so
Yeah,
I am
I
curious. I
mean,
don't know which one came first.
honestly, I don't know either. I mean, and I don't know that anything is sort of definitive out there. I kind of have this concept that werewolf as a game concept kind of came about in the 70s. But I don't know that that's true, and I don't know that you can find out if it's true. And also the games are mechanically identical, right? Like you can make this system have whatever theme you want. And with Mafia, it's kind of cops and robbers. With Werewolf, it's sort of supernatural. But I've run werewolf games that are intentionally themed not to be werewolf oriented, right? I've run games of werewolf where the setting is like Chinese mythology,
Oh,
based on some legends and lore that I researched when I lived in China. I've run games of werewolf where the theme is Sailor Moon, and the werewolves are denizens of the Negaverse, and the players are Sailor Scouts. And so like you can outfit this system sort of however you want, as long as everybody has a core understanding of what the rules and mechanisms are. It works, right? Um, but again, I know it's not for everybody.
fair enough. All right. Thank you, Josh. This was a really good idea. And um, stay tuned, theoretically, to more of these. Thank you, as always, gentle video watcher, for watching this. See below if you want to like give us ideas for videos and whatever. The best way to do that is through our Discord. You'll see a link down below. You'll notice this little sign behind me, Vampire Survivors right now is on gamefound.com. Good for late pledge. Now I got that
And
commercial on
and
the
tell
out of the.
us
Tell us what.
tell us in the comments why Werewolf and BSG aren't tens.
Or R10s, if you happen to agree. I'd appreciate that. Any final words, Josh?
I'm looking forward to defending more tens. And then when you're doing your bottom 500, I'll be on to defending my nines.
Very nice. All right. Have a good day, everybody.